Every government in history has found a way to take your money without asking. This is how they do it today. Your government has a secret tool. It works silently. It takes money from your pocket without touching your wallet. It is called inflation, and governments designed it that way. Every year you do nothing, you lose. Every year, without fail. Before central banks, governments had a simpler theft method. Roman emperors melted coins and added cheap metals. Same value, less gold. Modern governments do the same thing, just with a printing press. More money in circulation means each unit buys less, always. This is not accidental. Governments target 2% inflation deliberately. 2% sounds harmless. Over 35 years, it cuts your money's value in half. Governments carry massive debt. Inflation secretly pays it down. If you owe $1 trillion and inflate, you repay with cheaper dollars. The debt stays the same on paper, but its real burden quietly shrinks. This is called debt monetization. It is the oldest government trick. Governments also collect more taxes automatically when inflation rises. Your salary grows with inflation, but the tax bracket stays fixed. You pay more. This is called bracket creep. It was never voted on, it just happens. Inflation also reduces the real cost of government spending commitments. Pension promises made decades ago become cheaper to fulfill in inflated dollars. The people who suffer most are savers. Cash in a bank loses every year. The people who benefit most are debtors, especially governments themselves. Asset owners, stocks, real estate, gold, are shielded from inflation. The poor hold cash, the rich hold assets. Inflation transfers wealth upward. This mechanism is called the Cantillon effect, named after a 1700s economist. New money enters the economy at the top, not distributed equally at all. By the time new money reaches workers, prices have already risen. Always. The 2021 U.S. stimulus printed $5 trillion in under 2 years, historic scale. Inflation hit 9.1% by June 2022, highest in 40 years. No one was surprised. The Fed claimed inflation was transitory. Prices never came back down fully. Meanwhile, government tax revenues hit all-time records in 2022 and 2023. Japan has had near-zero inflation for 30 years. Economy barely moved. The EU targets exactly 2% inflation. Not 0, not 1, 2. Always 2. A 0% inflation target would force governments to repay debt at full value. So 2% is not about economic health, it is about debt management, theirs. In 1971, a Big Mac cost 65 cents. Today, it costs over $5.50. Same burger. Since 2020, global central banks printed more money than the previous century combined. Rent in major cities doubled in 5 years. Wages rose far slower. Everywhere. A generation now cannot afford homes their parents bought on single incomes. Governments have no incentive to stop. Inflation serves them too well. Some nations are exploring gold-backed currencies to escape this trap. Inflation is not a natural disaster. It is a policy choice. Their choice. Your savings are a loan to a system designed to quietly pay you back less. Governments will always prefer inflation over austerity. Follow the incentive. Protecting yourself requires owning what inflation cannot destroy. Now ask, why does your government want 2% inflation? You already know.
Topic 2. The Weimar Collapse.
Germany, 1923. A loaf of bread cost 200 billion marks. Not a typo. Workers were paid twice a day. Prices rose before they could spend it. People burned banknotes for heat. It was cheaper than buying firewood. This was not natural. A government did this, step by step, deliberately. World War I ended in 1918. Germany lost. The bill was catastrophic. The Treaty of Versailles demanded 132 billion gold marks in reparations. Germany had no gold. It had a printing press. The government chose printing. During the war, Germany had already printed heavily to fund the fighting. The mark was already weakened. Reparations demands pushed it off a cliff. In 1919, $1 bought 48 marks. By 1923, it bought 4.2 trillion marks. The government printed to pay workers, soldiers, reparations, everything. Prices doubled every few days, then every few hours, then every minute. Shop owners refused paper marks. They demanded foreign currency or goods. Farmers stopped sending food to cities. Why accept worthless paper? Cities began to starve. Industrial workers had money but nothing to buy. The middle class was destroyed. Life savings became worthless overnight. Anyone with foreign currency or gold became instantly obscenely wealthy. Americans and British tourists vacationed in Germany. Everything was free to them. Foreigners bought German factories, land, and homes for pocket change. The psychological trauma lasted generations. Germans became obsessed with stability. By November 1923, $1 equaled 4,210 billion German marks. The Reichsbank finally stopped the presses, introduced the Rentenmark. One Rentenmark replaced 1 trillion old marks. Instantly, overnight fix. The hyperinflation stopped within weeks, proving it was always a policy choice. But the damage to society had already been done. Trust was shattered forever. The real winner of Weimar hyperinflation was the German government itself. All domestic debt was wiped out. War bonds, pensions, government loans, gone. Ordinary Germans who lent money to the government lost everything, completely. The chaos created fertile ground for extremist politics. Enter Adolf Hitler. The beer hall putsch happened in November 1923, same month as peak inflation. Economic desperation drove ordinary people toward radical promises. It always does. Germany today has the most inflation-phobic central bank culture on earth. Germans still buy gold at higher rates than almost any other wealthy nation. The Weimar trauma explains Germany's resistance to ECB money printing policies. Venezuela followed the same path 90 years later. Different country, same script. Argentina has repeated this cycle 8 times since 1950. 8 defaults. Hyperinflation is not an accident. It is what happens when trust collapses completely. Every hyperinflation in history followed the same 3 steps: print, deny, collapse. The government always survives. The middle class never fully recovers. Never. Today's money printing is different in speed, not in kind. Watch carefully. History does not repeat, but it rhymes loudly enough to wake you up. The wheelbarrow of cash was not a metaphor. It was a warning. Still is. Your purchasing power is only as safe as your government's discipline. Weimar ended. The suffering of its people funded the debt of its leaders. Remember their faces the next time a government says inflation is under control.
Topic 3. Zimbabwe and Venezuela.
Zimbabwe printed a $100 trillion banknote. It bought 3 eggs. Venezuela's inflation hit 1,000,000% in 2018. Not a misprint. Both countries were once among the wealthiest in their regions. Both. Same playbook, different decade. Same catastrophic ending for ordinary people. Zimbabwe gained independence in 1980. Robert Mugabe came to power immediately. In 2000, Mugabe seized white-owned farms and redistributed them. Production collapsed. Zimbabwe had been Africa's breadbasket. Within 3 years, it faced food shortages. To pay government workers and war veterans, Mugabe ordered the printing presses on. Inflation began climbing. 50%, then 500, then 50,000, then no ceiling at all. By November 2008, monthly inflation was 79.6 billion%, officially. ATMs ran out of cash within minutes of being filled. Lines stretched for blocks. Hospitals stopped functioning. Doctors demanded payment in foreign currency only. The government printed higher denominations, then higher, then abandoned the currency. In 2009, Zimbabwe officially abandoned the Zimbabwean dollar, used US dollars instead. The currency that took decades to build was destroyed in under 10 years. Venezuela has the largest proven oil reserves on Earth, more than Saudi Arabia. Hugo Chavez won election in 1999 promising oil wealth for ordinary Venezuelans. State oil company PDVSA was gutted. Political loyalty replaced technical expertise. When oil prices fell in 2014, Venezuela had no savings, no reserves, no backup. Maduro took over from Chavez and printed money to cover the shortfall. Massive amounts. Supermarket shelves emptied. Basic goods, rice, flour, medicine disappeared.
Venezuelans lost an average of 11 kilograms of body weight in 2017. Hunger. The bolivar lost 99.99% of its value between 2012 and 2021, nearly everything. Venezuela redenominated its currency 3 times, removed zeros. Problem remained. By 2019, over 5 million Venezuelans had fled the country, largest exodus in the Americas. Those who stayed used Colombian pesos, US dollars, even crypto to survive daily. Oil infrastructure collapsed from neglect. Output dropped 75%, fields sitting idle. The richest oil nation on earth could not afford to keep its lights on, blackouts daily. Zimbabwe's central bank governor Gideon Gono received an award for his service. Mugabe died a multi-millionaire. His people ate from garbage bins during his rule. Venezuelan government officials were found with suitcases of cash in foreign airports. Maduro's government printed money while publicly blaming U.S. sanctions for inflation. Both governments maintained power throughout the crisis. Populations suffered alone. Zimbabwe introduced a new gold-backed currency in 2024. History watching nervously. Venezuela's inflation slowed after dollarization spread informally across the economy. Both economies remain fragile, one bad policy decision from repeating the cycle. Millions of refugees from both countries live permanently abroad, will not return. The pattern is spreading. Sri Lanka, Lebanon, Turkey. Different names, same disease. No country is immune. Wealth can be destroyed faster than it was built. The warning signs are always visible. Governments ignore them for political reasons. When a government controls the printing press and faces no accountability, this happens. The citizens who understood history moved money out early. Others lost everything. A $100 trillion note is not just history, it is a monument to misplaced trust. These countries were not poor or primitive. They were betrayed by their governments. Remember their story every time someone says your currency is safe. Ask why.
Topic 4. What the rich do. The wealthy do not keep their money in savings accounts, ever. They keep it in things inflation cannot touch, things you can own too. This knowledge is not secret, it is just not taught in school, deliberately. By the end of this section, you will think about money differently, permanently. Inflation protection starts with understanding what inflation actually attacks. Inflation attacks fixed value assets, anything that does not grow with prices. Inflation protects real assets, anything whose price rises with the cost of living. The wealthy figured this out centuries ago. Old money never sits still in cash. The Rothschilds held gold, land, and stakes in companies, never just paper. Warren Buffett called cash a terrible long-term store of value, repeatedly, publicly. Asset Class 1. Equities. Stocks represent ownership of real businesses. Companies raise prices when inflation rises. Revenues grow, so do share prices. The S&P 500 has returned roughly 10% annually for a century. Inflation averages 3%. Not all stocks protect equally. Commodity producers and real estate win most. Asset Class 2. Real estate. Land cannot be printed. Supply is permanently fixed. Rent rises with inflation. Mortgage debt stays fixed. The real value of debt shrinks. In the 1970s U.S. inflation crisis, real estate outperformed nearly every other asset. Asset Class 3. Gold. 5,000 years as a store of value, no counterparty risk. Gold does not pay dividends, but it holds purchasing power across centuries reliably. In 1971, gold was $35 per ounce. Today, it exceeds $2,300. Inflation adjusted, similar. Central banks themselves buy gold. They know what it means when currencies weaken. Asset Class 4. Commodities. Oil, copper, wheat. Prices rise with inflation directly. Commodity-linked stocks or ETFs give ordinary investors access without storage hassle. Asset Class 5.
Tips: Treasury inflation-protected securities, government bonds that adjust. Tips principal rises with CPI. Your return is guaranteed to beat official inflation. The wealthy combine all five, not one asset, a portfolio designed to survive anything. Geographic diversification matters too. Multiple currencies, multiple jurisdictions. Swiss bank accounts are not just for criminals. They are for currency crisis insurance. Singapore and Hong Kong offer stable legal frameworks for wealth preservation in Asia. The wealthy also own productive land. Farmland returns beat inflation historically. The top 1% hold over 50% of all stocks. They are permanently protected from inflation. The bottom 50% hold mostly cash and consumer debt, most exposed to inflation damage. Inflation is the most regressive tax ever invented. It hurts the poor most, always. The 2020 to 2022 money printing made billionaires $5 trillion richer in 2 years. Meanwhile, median U.S. household purchasing power fell for 2 consecutive years, same period. Bitcoin has entered the conversation as a potential inflation hedge, contested but real. Younger generations with no real estate are turning to crypto out of necessity. Gold demand from central banks hit record highs in 2022 and again in 2023. Real estate in major cities remains unaffordable for most. The asset gap widens. The wealthy are now buying farmland at record pace, institutional ownership rising fast. Inflation is a transfer mechanism. It moves wealth from savers to asset owners, silently. The rules are not hidden, they are just not distributed equally. Now you have them. Every year you hold cash is a year you pay the invisible tax. No receipt, no refund. Own things, productive things, real things. Things that exist beyond any government's reach. The rich are not smarter, they just play a different game. Now you know the rules.